Hi everyone, welcome to Lectora Live, and we are actually live today. You can see two of us right now. Actually, we're on both cameras. I am with Professor Karl Kapp. He is with Bloomsburg,
right.
Sorry, Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania. And Karl is one of my favorite guys. He's done a lot of training on lynda.com. I call you the voice of reason in a world of total insanity when it comes to gamification and interactivity and multimedia. If you haven't taken his lynda.com training or read any of his things, read them. And then go to your managers and say, hey, I learned something today. But how you doing, Karl?
Good, I'm doing well, yeah.
And you just did the keynote.
I did, yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a good time, and it was a new keynote for me, so it was really kind of interesting. It was my first non-linear keynote, so I let the audience choose what topics we would discuss.
That's not, that's funny. I like teaching that way. I mean, within reason, but how did it work out?
It worked out really well, The only thing is I had 10 different topics, and we got through all 9 of them. I thought,
wow, in an hour and a half.
Yeah, I thought we would not quite, I thought we would maybe get 6, 7, so I had to add some more topics.
That's good, wow.
Yes.
So it was pretty lively.
It was very lively, yeah. I use an interactive poll everywhere, so I poll the audience and also have, physical raise hand kind of interaction. I try to have a bunch of different interactions for really, because the keynote's also to demonstrate the methodology behind it, not just.
But that's rare because most keynotes, it's just a lecture kind of thing. It's fun, they're usually interesting, but there's nothing interactive about them.
Right, no, they're
so
not
this
very
is
many.
the new kind of keynote.
Right, exactly. And since I'm talking about interactive learning and engagement, I feel I need to model that, not just I've been to presentations where they're talking about story and they never tell a story, right? So I feel I really need to do that in order to model the behavior I'm talking about.
But isn't it funny, because a lot of times I've done a little bit of teaching on storytelling, and I always tell people, if you're not a storyteller, you're probably not going to be a very good storyteller. And that's the problem with a lot of storytelling. Unless they've actually learned how to tell a story or they're natural at telling stories, they're not usually going to know how or what's a narrative, what's this, what's that. And you don't have to know all of that from a technical point of view, but it helps if you know how to kind of start, maybe have a climax and an ending to a story, or a mystery or something. And a lot of, for example, instructional designers are never taught how to write a story.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And it's such a key thing from a learning perspective. So it's kind of like, it reminds me of, like Pablo Picasso supposedly said, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist, right? So,
that's
learn the elements of storytelling so that you know when to back off or when to press an issue or an element. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, on the other hand, you've got Lucas, who when he does Star Wars has like 4 climaxes, and it's like, we're over. No, we're not.
No, we're not.
Wait, we're over now again. No, we're not. It's like, oh, this is it. It's the finale. No, it's not. And then by then I'm asleep. It's like, this one too many. It's climax, anticlimax, climax, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is
like a roller coaster.
It was really bad in the prequel, when they did the number 1, which went on for I think 3 hours.
It was long.
And I fell asleep 4 or 5 times. Our daughter was with her. She's a teenager at the time. She's like out.
Right.
And now Leslie, who's actually recording right now, she's like the whole time. She loves Star Wars. Yeah, I'm out. So, and I'm a science fiction fan, but I couldn't stand up and down. It's slow. It's fast. Yeah. It's slow.
And slow is really slow.
And slow is slow.
Yeah.
But that's funny. So what did you get out of the keynote from doing it from your first experience doing an interactive keynote?
So it was really the time thing was very interesting to me. That I got through much more content, and this was a great audience because they were engaged from the beginning.
Good.
And they really it's a little bit more technical audience than sometimes I talk to. These are developers and designers, so they got the technology really quickly. Sometimes I'll have trouble with. With the audience response system, people are like, oh, I don't know how this works or that works. And actually, the first time, the person that introduced me had them actually set up the audience response. Like usually I do that myself. So that was really helpful. So I think that's a good tip. And then I also got really interesting questions. People say, hey, I'm working with scientists or I'm working with physicians and they really just want the facts, and how do we really help them more engaging or interactive.
Training doctors is tough.
It is tough.
It is tough.
It's because they know everything. So it's really hard to teach somebody that knows everything.
Well, you know the old joke about the doctor that dies and goes to heaven, and he gets to the pearly gates, and the St. Peter looks at him and goes, "No, sorry, you've got to go to the end of the line. There's like 5,000 people in line." He goes, "Do you know who I am? I'm like the top doctor in Beverly Hills. I'm hot. I'm good. How dare you make me wait?" He goes, "Sorry, you have to go to the back of the line." So he goes grumbling off. And about a couple of hours later, another doctor comes running right in and goes right through the gates into heaven. The first doctor goes, "This is insane." So he goes running back up and says, "Why did that doctor? That guy's a nobody. Why did he get in without when I couldn't?" He goes, "Well, that's not really a doctor. That's God making believe he's a doctor." So anyway,
that's pretty good.
Oh, joke.
Yeah.
I need a kadong.
Right. Yeah.
But so that is it is interesting to do an interactive keynote because you're right, you get their attention in a much different way.
Yes. Yeah.
And you've done other keynotes
in
the past. And how were they different from this one, other than you're talking a lot more,
right.
probably?
So the really interesting thing was a lot of those were were linear keynotes. So I knew what was coming next and what I would talk about next, and the flow of the conversation. This one, since it was, they got to choose the order, I didn't always know what was going to come next or where to go. And then it was funny, I didn't anticipate this, but I had one person, so I had risk and challenge and failure. And so someone kept yelling out action.
Action.
And like, I said, "Oh, you want to go to action?" Somebody said, No, we don't want to go to action. So I had a show of hands, and like only one person wanted to go to action. Everybody else wanted to go, somewhere else. Like
interesting.
Challenge.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I didn't anticipate, one person kind of controlling or kind of.
Right. So at that point, you just said leave.
Right. So I had to be probably a little bit more aware of, is it most people or just one person or that kind of thing. Now the answers are available. On my blog, so they could go later. So I felt that if you didn't get to see all the information, you could eventually see it. It just wasn't in that particular presentation.
Well, that's cool because you're tying it to a live presentation. Then they could go online to actually get more information on the presentation and what the answers. That's really kind of interesting. It ties everything together.
Yeah, it was an experiment, and I feel like it went pretty well. And the other thing that I was curious about was, and I don't have the answer for this, but would people be upset that we didn't cover all the information? Here was it presented, but it wasn't always covered.
Some probably would, because there's always somebody who needs every last bit of information. I don't feel I got everything.
Right.
What was missing? Action.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, that is interesting. Yeah. So, but on the whole, you can feel the audience when they're doing this.
You can.
It's a different energy at that point.
It's definitely it.
Darn, I wish we could have. We had a whole mess of problems today with the setting up, which we normally don't, but today was just odd.
Yeah.
And so we had to miss it. I was going, darn, I really wanted to see you.
Well, next time I'm doing it. Well, one of the impetuses behind this was, instead of preparing a different keynote every presentation, because it's a different keynote every time, I could prepare one and then do it over and over again.
Well, that's brilliant. That's actually brilliant. It sounds like a lot of fun. It just sounds, what I like about that is not only are they engaged, but they keep you engaged.
Right, exactly.
So, because a lot of times when you've done keynotes or you get in front of people, like you said, you know where you're going. You can change the tempo. You can maybe sidetrack a little bit. But you'll ultimately know exactly where you're going and what they're going to see.
Right.
In this case, you don't really know where they might take you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's very much. And so
did you have any surprises?
I did. I had so I put a red herring into the presentation. So it was Funkadelic sound waves. So it was like, what makes engaging instruction? Someone's like, Funkadelic sound waves. And so basically it says, no, this is ridiculous. And then we go back to the presentation. So that got a big kick out of it. But it actually was purposeful because what I wanted was people to think about the choice that they made. So not just to yell out something, but think about, hey, I want to learn about this. And I felt that by having kind of that red herring in there, and people seeing that early, they would say, oh, I really have to pay attention. I can't just yell out things. Maybe he's doing it again. So that was kind of my impetus behind that. And
which is good, because now all of a sudden they don't know what to expect.
Right.
And that puts them a little bit on guard. Well, what do I have to be a little bit careful now? What should I say? What shouldn't I say?
Right, exactly.
Which is good, because that gets a group going.
Right. And thinking, I really want, a lot of keynotes, have people think, but I really wanted them to think through, like, not just afterwards, but during the process.
Right.
Like, oh, okay, I need to pay attention to this, or I need to notice this, or I need to do that.
That's really clever. That's really clever. Actually, have you heard of interactive before? Is this the first time that you just decided to try it?
I haven't. Yeah, I just decided to try it. So my other one.
Because I haven't heard of interactive before, and I've been to enough keynotes.
Yeah, I've been to a bunch of keynotes. I haven't seen anything like that. And what I'm really trying to do is kind of break some of the traditional paradigms around keynote. The interesting thing, I've been using Poll Everywhere for a number of years, and I've embedded it into a story, but I haven't seen many people embedding it into a story like that. And so I always wanted to take it to the next level. So I've been doing a lot of workshops on how to embed a story and that kind of stuff. But then, when you teach people how to do that, you need to stay one step ahead. So then I thought, well, okay, if I do this kind of interactive, non-linear presentation, really the experiment was, could I do a non-linear presentation? And could it still make sense and hang together? So the basic theme is we're traveling around the world, and you go to these different places collecting clues to find out who is the, there's a missing professor, so you have to find her.
Okay.
And then what are the elements of engaging instruction? And the other thing that I do that I enjoy about it is the presentation provides content and information, but at the end we break it down. I say, okay, what elements did I use to make this, so the element of story and character and interactivity, and so it's almost like we examine the keynote after it's over.
Which is interesting.
What did he do? And my drive behind that is I want other people to go and do this, right? I want
and you get instant feedback for yourself on
Yes.
where they were and how they got there, and it's really interesting. This brings up just an idea that years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, training was a little bit different. It was a little more creative. I call it's been democratized, but in a bad way. It's been mediocratized, I guess, is probably. The tools have gotten real easy. So as a result, people aren't thinking a lot. Just get it out there quick. It's a page turner. Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
But it's boring. And people aren't engaged. And when you're dealing with multiple generations in the workforce, all learning very different styles, you're pretty much losing at least one or two of them at all times.
Yeah.
And how do you get them engaged? So what you did today basically got everybody going.
Yeah.
Because you kind of have to get involved in that.
Right, and if you the other thing too, I think, is if you're like, daydreaming, come in and out, you're not following the flow because it's not a linear flow.
Right, then you know where you've been.
Exactly. So you really have to keep up with what's happening in the presentation.
That's really interesting. And how do you teach when you teach classes? Do you do something similar?
Sometimes I do. In my class, I teach a class called Managing Multimedia Productions, and the students have to write a proposal. So I actually, beginning of the semester, break them into teams. Okay. And so they have teamwork every class, and so we do every class I try to have some engaging activity. There's a little bit, so I say to people, lecture is a tool, and there's some places where lecture works. But you can't use it for everything, right? A hammer's a good tool to have, but you can't hammer everything.
Especially when you're trying to teach production.
Exactly, yes. Definitely when you're teaching production, yeah. So what I do is I give them a little bit of content and then have some type of group activity. Sometimes it's with their same team group, sometimes it's different, but to get them thinking about applying the concepts. I think, especially in higher ed, a lot of times, what's missing is that application of what you're teaching.
Right, a lot of theory not enough practice, and we see it on the back end as a consulting company who's doing projects all over the place, and we hire newbies out of school. A lot of them know nothing, right? And it's like, oh, yeah. So we're basically retraining. Because did you ever do this? No. Have you ever? No, you were a video editor, right? Can I see one of your video samples? That's something a 5-year-old could have done. Right. It's like, that's it? Right. That's all they made us do. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. What'd you do it with? My phone, of course.
Looks like it.
Yeah. And it really felt like it. It's like, but we see a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a problem because I'm in California, so that is a whole different world. Right. We don't see too many people from other parts of the country applying for jobs unless they want to relocate to California, but usually because they want to be actors or actresses. Oh, right, yeah. So it's a little different. Yeah. They come from sometimes all the wrong reasons, and some of them make it. Right. Most don't.
It's expensive to live out there too.
It is,
especially coming from the east.
It is. Yeah, our daughter and son-in-law just moved to Boise, Idaho, because they could buy a 1-acre house for the price of half a condo in LA.
Wow. Yeah.
It's insane.
That is insane. Yeah.
So you look at stuff like that and go, yeah, California is expensive, but the climate's good. So,
yeah, the climate is
you know,
nice.
no,
It is
we're older, so we kind of got grandfathered into California.
Nice.
So as a result, you know, it wasn't that bad when we started growing
Right.
up, but now it's gotten insane.
Yeah.
I don't know how people survive in California, especially young ones. It is expensive.
Yeah.
Well,
When I do the Linda stuff, like all the young producers are like, yeah, I'm living in like really small place. My son is actually living in, so it's kind of like in Manhattan. He's in Manhattan.
Oh, yeah.
In a one
They're
studio.
closets. They're like
it's
closets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so he was in Hoboken. He had a 2-room apartment, and now he moved to Manhattan, and he can't even take the couch with him. Like, you can't even sit there. Yeah.
And as he did that, you hear, I'm moving on up.
Right, yeah, exactly. I'm like, you
Do the big
kidding me?
time.
Yeah, I'm like, he goes, Dad, I only sleep in there. It doesn't matter. And it's got a really great kitchen. I'm like, hey, you don't even cook. Like, why do you even care about the kitchen?
That's so funny. They go, I'm in New York. That's all that counts.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's
I'm in
Manhattan, Dad.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what's he studying?
So he works for it's called an expert network firm. So if you own a hedge fund, you contact his firm and say, hey, I need to talk to somebody about oil because I'm thinking of investing in oil.
Interesting.
And he finds somebody that knows something about oil and then makes the connection.
So it kind of stops him from really going in the wrong direction, or because the stock market's interesting, especially with hedge funds and anything else. If you don't know what you're doing,
Right.
you're in trouble.
Right, exactly.
And if you have somebody kind of guiding you along, that's not a bad idea.
No, it's so that they get information so they make intelligent choices about where to invest and what to invest in. And for them to spend all day trying to find somebody,
It's
can
hard.
be really difficult.
It's hard.
So
Yeah.
that's what that firm does.
From
And
real
they-
to huckster, there's a
Right,
lot.
yeah,
There's a lot in between too.
Yeah. And so they have about 6 to 8 people that work in the firm.
Now, tell us a little bit about you've done a lot of work with Lynda.com, and the classes have been good. What have you done so far with them?
So I've actually done a number of courses. So I've done a number of courses focused more on academia. So I did one on how to write a syllabus. I did one on core strengths or core strategies for being a professor. So I talk about the importance of teaching and research and service. I did one on grant writing to help professors figure out navigate through the grant world. So I've done those, and I did one on engaging learning techniques.
I saw that one.
Yeah,
that was
that
good.
was a fun one to do. And then on the other side, I've done gamification course, gamification of learning and instruction.
Well, that's one we start off in the beginning. That is one of the best. I've been through a lot of these. I would say it's the best I've heard or even read about of what gamification is, how to approach it, and really what to expect out of it. I thought it was a great, 45-minute class, I think, or something like that?
That one, actually, it's a couple hours.
Is it longer than that?
Yeah, it seems shorter.
It
That's
felt
awesome.
shorter,
That's great.
I went through the whole thing and I go, that was really fast, and it was good. I went through it in one session.
It was fun. It was
I just
fun
went
to
from
do.
beginning to end, and I thought that was fast.
It was a lot of fun.
And
That was my first Lynda.com course ever.
Was it really?
Yeah.
You did great.
I guess I've gone downhill.
If you're looking to go on Lynda.com, or if you take a course and you want, somebody told you we need gamification, go through that course first. It'll give you a lot of insights on what to look for, what to do, and really what not to do and what not to think gamification is. It was really 2 hours well spent.
Yeah, thanks.
And honestly, I thought it was 45 minutes. I was just going, this
it was
is...
so much fun. One of the things that we did was they took like games, and then they set up like a camera rig to kind of pan the game, so it makes it look kind of epic, which is really kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then I just got back, earlier this year. So having on May 12th, gamification. I'm calling it gamification 2.0. They have a different naming convention.
Okay.
So that's coming out, and that's going to talk a little bit more about. Dig a little bit deeper into kind of what's happening with the tools and how to think about the tools and what tools make sense for what different situations. So
that's great.
That's going to be
so.
fun.
So what do you see as one of the biggest trends right now?
I think, I see a couple really interesting trends in terms of gamification. One is I see the beginning of the movement away from just points, badges, and leaderboards. That was the easy thing that a lot of people did quickly.
Yeah.
But now people are starting to think more, almost moving away from gamification to a thing called game thinking. Like, okay, let's think like a game designer instead of just putting points and badges and things.
Right.
And then I'm seeing a really interesting surge in virtual reality and interest in augmented reality, and trying to mix virtual. So I was working with a gentleman. He's at DeVry University in charge of their training, and they've created. This is fascinating to me. They've created. DeVry teaches a course on criminal justice.
Okay.
And they've created a VR environment where the final for your course is to solve a crime in VR.
Oh, interesting.
It is fascinating. It's 80% of your grade. So it's
wow.
they've really committed to it. And you have a crime scene, and you put like those yellow markers down. You could put notes about, I need to know more about this. And a lot of the game is about, so crime scene, everybody wants to be an investigator because it seems glamorous, but it's really kind of boring. And it really focuses a little bit on the boring parts so that you do them right, like filing of evidence, chain of evidence, making sure that you ask the right permissions, the warrant, writing up a warrant. So it's really fascinating how they've kind of gamified it in a VR environment, or made a game in more of a simulation.
That's interesting.
But as part of your grade, I think it's fascinating. Yeah.
We're just now starting to get into VR at Arca, but we're just starting to analyze it, look at it. What can we do with it? And there's so much you can do with it.
I know. It's exciting.
I saw a demo of, it was really a children's educational thing, but they were walking in kind of like a savanna or jungle, and these animals were coming up to them and talking to them. I'm a tiger. And it's like, wow.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And you could touch them. It was. I just sat there going, I would be a kid again.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, not that I'm that far away from being a kid, but I mean, I love that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just so much fun to see where we're going. I'm waiting for the holodeck. I mean, we're getting there. We are actually at the point where there's a new presentation tool where they're doing 3D holograms of the presenters at the different places at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And I haven't seen it yet, but I've been reading about it going, that sounds really cool.
That sounds great. That would help with my travel.
Exactly, yeah. But literally, you could have the same presentation at the same time in 6 venues, and you look like you're there.
Wow.
I guess they project you in a 3D hologram. That's pretty cool.
That's amazing, yeah.
So we're getting there. We're getting to a holodeck one. I keep joking that the day the porn industry gets a hold of it, it's over. It's over. That's really why the internet burgeoned. I mean, we live in California, in Southern California, which is kind of the capital of the porn industry. And there were some groups out there that were doing research on internet traffic, bandwidth, compression. And that's one reason YouTube did so well afterwards, because everybody benefited from the research. It's amazing. Not always the best reason for it, but it works. Well, Karl, it's been an absolute pleasure seeing you again and talking to you. It's always good to see you. And I'm glad you had. I really wanted to see that. What if anybody filmed it, or at least filmed part of it? That would have been fun, because I could have given them. I have some extra cameras I could have given them, but that's clever. So if you have a chance to see Karl live, don't miss it. It'll be fun. All right, Leslie, this is the end, and Leslie who's my wife, has been doing the show switching. She doesn't do this on a normal basis. She's really learning how to do this, and she's having fun. We're having fun, right? Yeah, right. All right, I think we're done for today, and not for today, but for this episode, and we'll see you guys a little bit later at the Lectora User Conference 2017. Have a good one, and we'll be back soon, so you can play the outro, and we're good.